Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning, and today we've got another combo that should give us some really impressive results. The last time we tested these shells a few weeks ago, they were really impressive, but honestly they were a little bit too tight of a pattern at 40 yards, so I figured we'll loosen the choke up just a little bit, and this should really kind of be the sweet spot, or at least that's the thought process coming into it here. But as for those shells I've brought out here today, I got out some more of the Salt Creek triple curl waterfowl shells. These ones are their 20 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 7/8 ounce payload of number 9 TSS shot, moving about 1400 feet per second. So these are a TSS number 9 in a waterfowl shell, which is absolutely plenty good enough for your ducks and geese in at those little bit closer ranges and stuff like that. But point being, these shells patterned really nicely for us last time we tested them, but a little bit too tight of a pattern for what some people might be looking for at 40 yards. So I suspect they should do very nicely through today's choke combination. And as for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out the Stevens 301 20 gauge, but I put this choke in the gun. This is a Skeet choke. Skeet chokes sit right between a cylinder bore and an improved cylinder. The last time we tested these shells, we ran them through an improved cylinder, and believe it or not, they were a touch on the tight side out of this setup. So with this being a little bit less constriction, with this particular choke being a 615 over what I believe was a 607 or something in that improved cylinder choke, I think this might really be the ticket for what we want to see out of these shells. So we'll see what it can actually do. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the duck target at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell as well. So let's get you guys a view of this target, and we'll take this shot and see just what kind of results we can get from these Salt Creek triple curl TSS waterfowl shells through this Skeet choke today. It's nothing fancy for a choke, but I think that constriction might really be the ticket here. So let's head over here and take this shot and see what kind of a pattern we're able to get. Alright, so that round gave us 1421 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1400, so I'd say we are pretty well exactly where we're supposed to be. In 1421 feet per second from a TSS 9, you're going to be carrying a pretty decent amount of energy down there all the way out to 40, 45, 50 yard range. The question is, what kind of a pattern were we able to get from that Skeet 615 constriction choke? I think it's probably going to look pretty good, but let's head down there and take a look and see what we actually got. Alright, well, now we're down here at our 40 yard target, and this is what we got. And I gotta say, yep, we absolutely have a demolished duck down here. That paper is just covered in shot, so he is not going anywhere, that's for sure. And as for the overall pattern here, we might be just a touch off to the right maybe, but that pattern does give you a good amount of leeway up, down, left, and right, and it is definitely a little bit more broad and open than what we saw with these shells through the improved cylinder choke, which is pretty much what I figured would happen. But I gotta say, for these being a 7/8 ounce load of TSS 9s through both an improved cylinder choke and a Skeet choke now, these are some really impressive patterns, because I think we could even step it down to just a straight up cylinder bore and still have a beautiful pattern, because this is just about perfect for what I think a lot of people are probably looking for here. Gives you a decent amount of leeway on either side, a nice evenly spread core. There's not really any huge gaps and voids and strings through the pattern, but I mean, if we look at this pattern here, there's nowhere here that he can fly to and get away from you. It's super even throughout 95+% of the pattern. The only real noticeable thing I see is this very top left corner up here is a little bit more sparse than the rest of the pattern, but the pattern is a touch off to the right, and that is on the very outskirt edge, and clearly I don't think it really would have made a difference here, that's for sure. So that is a beautiful looking pattern that I would not be scared to hunt with all day long. If you want a 20 gauge waterfowl shell, these ones seem to do pretty nicely. So now I'm definitely curious, number one, what would they do through a cylinder bore choke, which we can definitely try and see what happens, because I think that would also be a very nice, very usable waterfowl pattern. pattern. Number two, what could they potentially do out of a little bit of an older setup that might be a fixed improved cylinder or a fixed modified choke barrel, which I think I might have something that we can try for that as well, for those of you that might have a little bit of an older school type of setup. And number three, with how these shells have patterned so far, could these potentially be a little bit of a turkey shell as well? With what they've shown us, I think we could throw a turkey choke in that 301 and run these shells and have a legitimate turkey shell as well. So I think I want to try that at some point and see what happens there as well, even though they're not technically a turkey shell. So at the end of the day, another very, very nice pattern, very impressive results. Definitely can't complain about it one bit, and I wouldn't be scared to use it out in the woods all day long. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and as you can see, looks perfectly fine. Nothing weird going on, nothing stuck down in there, just a little cork piece they use. And I am not a reloading or a wad expert, so I don't immediately know off the top of my head what this wad is, but it does remind me of the low bore contact wads we saw in something like the Kent TK7 turkey shells in 12 gauge with these ribs along the side of it. And if it is some variation or description of one of those low bore contact wads, that's probably why we've been seeing the patterns that we have, because that wad, in the couple of times we've seen it, has done very, very nicely through any choke we've ever put it through. And these shells seem to be on the same track. So definitely nothing too interesting or weird to see, but this wad absolutely seems to be doing perfectly what it's supposed to do for us. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that pattern right there? That is absolutely a very nice, very usable 20 gauge waterfowl pattern. And it pretty much did exactly what I expected to see. Going to a little bit less constriction with that Skeet choke at 615, I figured was going to open up and give us a little bit more broad of a pattern, and that's exactly what it did. That is very close to perfect for a lot of situations, really. But at the end of the day, that's a pattern and a shell that we just can't seem to argue with. They just continue to perform, and honestly, for the choke constrictions we're running it through, I think these shells are patterning way tighter than what I would have ever expected them to. So could they potentially be under the radar turkey shell as well? I don't know, maybe, but I guess I'll leave it up to you guys. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you surprised one way or the other? Would you hunt with that kind of a pattern out of that shell? Have you tested any of the Salt Creek triple curl shells, whether it be in 12 gauge, 20 gauge, whatever the case would be? What kind of results have you seen out of them? Is there another choke combo that you might want to see these shells run through? And ultimately, where do we go from here with these shells? They've been super impressive so far, but is there something else you want to see with them? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.